Welcome all to PJ Net Live. It's Friday night. I feel like I should be, well, frankly, at a football field under the Friday night lights. I needed that. Hey, thanks for dropping in. I've got Refugee standing by in our green room, and he is anxious to share some stuff with you. What I think I want to do is give plenty of time for Hazards to have his perspectives that we look forward to every Friday night. So let's bring Refugee Roger into the PJ Net Live studio. And Roger, I haven't spoken to you since this time last week, and yet you are still there. You're still at it.
I'm still here. I'm still sitting in the exact same spot. I haven't moved.
And so am I.
No. It's actually been kind of a busy week this week, Mark, in my personal life and some stuff going on. But one of the things I want to do is start plugging next week's show right away, because I'm going to do a lot of work on that show. I'll be getting in touch with Gina during the week. Is Gina in the chat room right now, by the way?
I don't see her. She's not logged in anyway.
But I think we're going to have Gina on the show next week, and probably someone else as well. We're going to delve into the QAnon stuff next week quite a bit. Talk about what it is, where it started, what it comes from, what these guys are predicting next. Are they crazy? Are they not crazy? What's going on with Jim Comey? We're going to talk about that next week. So Comey's officially a liar who broke FBI policy. For the time being, he's not being prosecuted for anything that's happening yet, although there's still other ongoing investigations that he can be implicated in and could be prosecuted for. But he seems to think he deserves some kind of an apology. Mark, have you seen this?
No, I haven't. Tell me.
Oh yeah, he thinks he deserves an apology. So that's pretty ridiculous. I'll tell you what's not conspiracy, Mark, is that you had the sitting director of the FBI taking notes and sneaking things out of there and then giving information to his friend and then having his friend leak that information to the press in order to try and get an independent counsel going on Trump. That's just fact now. And the guy certainly broke department policy. At a minimum, and he certainly lied, and he was certainly one of these people who thought that rules were only for the little people, and he was a part of the establishment. Trump didn't fit his idea of what the establishment should be, and so he was completely and ridiculously anti-Trump. But the QAnon people have been talking about a lot of this stuff a lot. So anyway, we're gonna go there. We're gonna go to that QAnon place next week. And we're going to have some fun with that. Mark, the world is on fire. Global warming. Small number of hurricanes this year, but y'all are getting ready to get the Amazon's on fire now. They have fires every summer, of course, but somehow this is different. And a lot of people have been posting videos from even past years' fires and then acting like it's what's going on now. But on a serious note, how close will the hurricane be to you? Are you talking a couple hundred miles away or what? How close will the hurricane be to you? How prepared is Florida? How much trouble are you guys in?
Well, Florida's been through quite a few of these, and most North Florida, where I'm at, when you look at the Florida Peninsula, I think most people know where Jacksonville is at the northeastern corner, and Pensacola, of course, would be on the other side, on the western side, up against Alabama, Mobile, Alabama. So between those 2 points is Tallahassee. We call it the Big Bend. So we're in the panhandle of Florida. So the most likely effect of any hurricane that makes landfall in the Atlantic would be a nice cool breeze from the north as the wind circulates around the low pressure system. So we are not expecting weather-wise anything. However, it has already impacted Tallahassee. The Florida State season opener was scheduled for tomorrow in Jacksonville. It has been moved to Tallahassee, and people are coming into Tallahassee fast. Okay, everybody's buying gas now. We all go through this thing. You can call it panic if you want to. But today I noticed several gas stations. I told people, I said, hey, there's no line at the store over here. They said, really? I said, yeah, because they're out of gas. And
Well, what's weird is that our goals here in New Orleans, in some ways are a little different than your goals. The best thing for New Orleans is for that sucker to turn north as soon as it hits Florida, or for it to just like sit there over Florida and die out. The last thing we would want is for it to make a quick beeline across the state and end up in the Gulf of Mexico.
When I was with the Florida Baptist Association's disaster relief, we're organized by state, as the name implies, and we would try to plan for the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, in our view, would be a hurricane that makes landfall in the southern portion of the state, and we respond to that. Meanwhile, it gets back out into the Gulf of Mexico and makes landfall again in the northern part of the state, and that would really stretch our resources. Now, folks, let me tell you, the Southern Baptists have resources outside of Florida. We have plenty of them. Plenty. I mean, the Southern Baptists are the second largest disaster relief organization in the world. The Red Cross, 85% of the hot meals the Red Cross has ever delivered were prepared by Southern Baptists. Believe me, we take this very, very seriously. So we would not be lacking for resources. The resource we lack most after hurricane is people, volunteers, not money, not assets. There is infrastructure problems. You can have all the assets in the world, but if you don't have infrastructure, you cannot deploy them. You can't get them into the affected areas. We set up camp actually in the periphery. Now the news cameras go right to ground zero. You see, that's spectacular, but there's nobody at ground zero usually. So we set up outside where you can get supplies in and out. We are capable. We have one unit. It's a semi capable of producing 26,000 meals a day, hot meals a day. We have our smaller unit capable of producing 10,000 meals a day. Every state almost has similar capabilities, and they bring it. Folks, I'm telling you, this is a marvel to behold. It really is, and it's all run by volunteers such as myself. I was, I love it. I've seen a lot of good. I've seen a lot of bad. It's a real testosterone rush for us alpha males, but it's also a very needed and viable form of ministry. But the short answer to your question, as far as Tallahassee, the biggest problem we're having is people rushing to the stores. I'm always fascinated by people buying bottled water, because if you are living in the city, the chances of you losing water are less than winning the lottery. I mean, it's not going to happen. Water is going to be not your problem. And if you put gas in your tank, you can drive inland until you can find water, if that seriously became a problem. So I see these people buying water, and I wonder sometimes, if you're not living in the city, get out of here. I mean, buying canned goods, I get it, saltines and supplies, batteries.
Some people are just addicted to bottled water. Some people won't drink the stuff from the faucet, and they're worried that the stores are going to be closed. And and they just want their bottled water for that reason. The funny thing for me on hurricanes, I've been a victim, I've been a volunteer, and I've been an employee doing security. During hurricanes, we just had the 14th anniversary of Katrina the other day, and people in New Orleans react quite differently today because we had been so long without being hit that, quite honestly, when I grew up, pretty much every time there was a hurricane in the Gulf, the news would be telling us to evacuate, but people would be buying a bunch of liquor and making these hurricane drinks and having hurricane parties and playing music. Katrina really did kind of change all of that.
Kind of sobered up some of the.
Oh yeah. It sobered up all of that, but keeping with this weather theme, and of course we know that global warming is causing it, but I don't know if you noticed or not, but AOC put out a statement this week apparently she was on vacation and she woke up at 3:30 in the morning, just completely stressed out and filled with anxiety because of climate change. And she can't sleep through the night anymore because of climate change, Mark. It's affecting her sleep. Meanwhile, Obama, who agrees with her and who agrees with all of these policies, you know what he did this week?
Played golf? I don't know.
He bought a new $25 million home
I've been
right
seeing
up
stuff
against
about
the
that.
Atlantic Ocean up in the Northeast that, according to AOC, is going to be underwater within the next 10 to 15 years. And according to a lot of the alarmists. So I don't know if he really believed that stuff, why he would be investing $25 million. And again, hey, I'm a capitalist. I don't actually have a problem with former presidents going out and charging speaking fees and writing books and making a bunch of money and being successful and spending their money. But it seemed to me that Obama always wanted to be really generous with other people's money. He sure was critical of people buying their big mansions and their yachts and this and that and the other. And boy, he sure does seem to be settling right into that lifestyle, doesn't he?
I'm scrolling through Facebook to look for a post that I think it was on Facebook. But let me, we're just kind of rambling. On global warming, the best argument I have heard against global warming has little to do with science. And I've actually got it on video, but the language is so bad. But the speaker said something, I've never heard this argument, but it is extremely profound, and you alluded to it a moment ago. You said Obama wouldn't invest $25 million in a house that he knew would be underwater. Well, on the surface, that sounds pretty good, but dig a little deeper. The bank isn't going to invest in mortgages on property.
No, property values wouldn't be going up on these beachfront properties either, would they, Mark?
Well, the value of that collateral. So if banks are loaning money to build up these beaches the way obviously they are. I'm determined to find this post from AOC. I may have to. Okay. Nope. Okay. So, the banks have done their homework. So I don't believe banks believe that global warming is going to put the coast underwater anytime within the repayment period of that loan. I guess I will simply not find the Facebook post, but if it was authentic, and I don't know. Okay. AOC says, I see all these people rushing to buy gasoline in their cars, and if we had green power, if our cars were electric, if the power went out, how would you get gasoline? Somehow she was advocating for electric cars. And I thought, what an idiot.
I saw something weird the other day that somebody posted a picture of. Just struck me as odd. It was a big electric car charging station at a gas station, and it had a big diesel generator hooked up to it. And
well, I actually don't think I'm trying to imagine going forward how battery powered cars are going to be used in long trips, for your family vacation. And here's what I have kind of come up with in my mind is along the interstate. First of all, the car companies need to get together and standardize the battery and make it a hot swappable item. So what you will do is you pull into this place and a freshly charged, your battery will be it'll be on rails, it'll just slide out. They'll have to, they're heavy, but by whatever means they basically
like swapping out your propane tank.
Something like that. And then the freshly charged one would be slid in its place, and then of course you would go down the road, pay your fee, whatever, and then the battery you left behind would be the next battery to be charged. And that's kind of how I see it going. I do believe that the piston engine has probably seen its best days. You're going to see more and more electric powered or hydraulic powered, which is ultimately electric powered. But the farce that this is some sort of zero emissions thing is far from true, because that doesn't take into account the cost of mining batteries, and what are we going to do with all these batteries when they become exhausted and have to be
We need a
disposed
big
of?
breakthrough in battery technology too that hasn't happened yet. We need batteries to get more efficient,
Well, they
and
have.
they have, but we need
Roger,
to
this would not be possible
right.
just 20 years ago. I mean, remember the old NiCad batteries,
Right.
nickel cadmium. You know,
Right. But it needs to continue. No, but Mark, the global warming folks. Ed Begley Jr. He was a comedian and he was an actor, and there's one thing I always respected about him, and this is kind of where he lost me, and I just couldn't respect him anymore. The one thing I always respected about him, I didn't agree with his ideas on the environment, but he was this guy that actually walked the walk. Like, he would actually go buy his carbon credits if he had to fly, and he actually like had his greenhouse and he did everything that he could to minimize his carbon footprint. And if I had known I was going to tell the story, I would have looked up the name of the scientist that was referred to. But he was being interviewed by somebody in the media about the subject. And he was giving the typical line about all the scientific agreement. And the person from the media interrupted him and he said, well, Dr. So-and-so disagrees. And Ed Begley put his hand up and he said, Dr. So-and-so is not a climatologist. He has PhDs in meteorology and physics. He is a physicist and a meteorologist. He knows nothing about climatology. And I just had to turn it off because, they've literally only made up the climatology degree.
yeah, that's a new discipline that they invented. Yeah.
And if you're going to tell me that somebody with a PhD in physics and somebody with a PhD in meteorology doesn't understand about climate, okay, and the causes of climate, I'm sorry, but that guy's pretty much got the whole gamut covered. Okay, in his education. Pretty ridiculous stuff. But I'm getting old, Mark. We all are, okay, but I was paying a little bit more attention, probably a little earlier in politics to when you were. And I'll tell you what I barely remember it, but I remember it. I was a kid, but I was a little free kid. And I can remember the book, The Population Bomb, and I can remember.
We studied it. We studied that book in college.
All be starving to death by the year 2000.
Yeah.
Okay. And I can remember the talk of global cooling. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then I watched as that kind of went away, and I watched as, the hole in the ozone layer became the big threat. And that was kind of related to global warming, but the idea that basically the ozone layer was going to go away. And they were just ignoring the fact that, Mr. Sun was constantly up there, constantly making new ozone, and that there's always been a hole in the ozone layer, and it gets bigger and it gets smaller and it moves around. And that, the brilliant Al Gore and with all of the money of George Soros could not do damage to the ozone layer if he wanted to, and if he set out to do it. And then, of course, it became about global warming, and it still is to an extent, but in order to kind of cover themselves, they've gone off into climate change. But I specifically remember when Rush Limbaugh had his 10-year doomsday clock. That ran out about 5 years ago. And it's funny to hear AOC talk about 12 years now, because Al Gore had talked about how we had exactly 10 years left to save the planet. And he said we needed to make the kinds of changes in laws, we needed to come up with the kind of international treaties and develop within 10 years, or it would be too late. Okay. Well, we're about 5 years past that now. And, and they're still talking. But I'll tell you the other research that's really interesting to do that really debunks global warming. I had become interested. I noticed that when you looked at, if you research the temperature on the planet, there's two different means that they use to estimate temperature. One is thermometers, and they have a temperature record based on that. And the other is satellite pictures from space, and they have a temperature picture based on that. And they diverge. According to the thermometers, there's been more warming, and we're warming than these satellite images from space. And so the global warming people try to say why NASA's wrong, or why these satellite images from space aren't a good idea. But you can research this topic. I have. This is what's going on with our temperature things. They average out. They'll put in a certain number of thermometers in an area, and then they will average out the temperature in those thermometers. Mm-hmm. The problem is they'll go to a place, a huge area like Brazil, and they'll put one of the thermometers in the middle of the wilderness where you get an accurate temperature, but they'll put the other thermometer in the middle of a city, which is a heat island. Okay, where it's 5 degrees warmer than it is in the wilderness because of all the concrete that we've built. And you just put it, in this little bitty area, you have a heat island. But of course, like 98% of the area is cooler. So this little heat island is not doing anything to infect the environment. But they average out that temperature from that heat island and that temperature from out in the wilderness. And that's what they use as temperature. It's a falsely inflated temperature.
Yeah.
And
kind of like doing away with the electoral college.
We'll just go
with the popular vote. Anyway, okay. Then next week, folks, you heard Refugee announce. By the way, if you're not following Refugee on Twitter, you can do so right there at American Refugee, and he's putting a lot of work into next week's program. And at the very least, it will be entertaining. At the very least, it will be dramatic. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't believe any of it, so come check us out at that point.
And we'll be. Here's a big thing. We're going to be honest. Like we're going to have some QAnon people, and we're going to honestly interview them, and we're going to look at it for what it is. We're neither going to be selling it nor doing everything we can to say these folks are crazy or this or that or the other. Because it's hard to get people taking an honest look at anything. And so we're going to take an honest look at it next week, Mark.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to that. And Refugee, you keep doing the research, and we will see you right here. And you may not be alone. We may have, we don't know how many we'll have. It'll be a lot better than the Twitter boot camp. Once we know how many panelists we have, we will set up a studio with that many screens. I think it'll be a technological breakthrough.
It'll be a wonder.
It'll be a
technological breakthrough for the Patriot Journalist Network.
You bet, because we have the tools to do this. We just got to find the time. So, all right. Well, Refugee,
I'm praying for those folks in Florida. I know it's going to be a tough ride.
Yeah,
that thing looks like it's going to be a Cat 4 when it hits.
People will be affected. It will be bad. So, all right. Well, we're going to send Refugee back to the bayou, just like that. How about it? Hazards 4 will be coming up with perspectives. I think he announced that'll be in about 15 minutes. There are some things I would like to announce, but I don't want to encroach on any more of your time. Suffice it to say, I'm asking you all to be in prayer. Some exciting things are happening, and that's all. I hate to tease you like that, but as I went to bed last night, an idea came into my mind that goes back. Sunbelt Girl is with us. Goes way, way, way back to an idea that we had 5 years ago, but there were 2 obstacles at that time. And it occurred to me last night that both of those obstacles no longer exist. And you are about to see the PJNet brand take off like you've never seen before. And it's going to be for the cause. Oh, by the way, go to my Twitter bio. I haven't changed my bio in years and years and years. It used to say Christian Technologist. I changed it. It now says Kingdom Propagandist, because I think that's a better fit. That's all I'll tell you for now. Let's continue as Hazards 4 plays the tunes, and we'll look forward to his perspective coming up in just a few minutes right here on PJNet Live.